How's it going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going to be here for the next 2 hours, which should be very interesting here on Wrestling Observer Live. Hour number one, our guest will be Dory Funk, who probably goes back when it comes to knowledge of wrestling as far back as maybe anyone still alive that's still around the business, because he started following wrestling, I would guess, somewhere between the age of 5 and 8 years old, and that was a long time ago, late 1940s, mid-1940s. Seen everyone, wrestled just about everyone, still around, and we'll be talking to him about what he's been up to. And, of course, hour number two, Vince Russo, whose book, Unforgiven, just came out not all that long ago, and we'll be talking about his book, his career, and what he's up to these days. So I expect this is going to be a real interesting show, and I've been looking forward to it a long time, actually.
Wow, that's good.
Oh, yeah, especially... we have a lot of stuff because with Dory Funk Jr. and we get him on, we can also talk about Ricky Romero because it's an interesting character in Southwest wrestling folklore, not really well known outside of the Southwest, but he went up and down those roads. You know that saying. I mean, he really did for 20 plus years, and was a major drawing card in a lot of cities in the Southwest. Then we could talk to him about Ricky Romero passed away about a week ago, and El Tejano passed away about a week ago as well, which was only at the age of 47. And I mean, El Tejano was one of the first. I mean, the Death Missionaries were the first really famous trio when Mexican wrestling kind of switched from tag teams to trios as the big drawing card. And I remember watching the Death Missionaries or Los Misioneros de la Muerte in the very early 1980s, and in California actually, and then in Japan when they wrestled with Tiger Mask, and just really ahead of their time in the sense that they were just really quick. I mean, they worked so fast and nonstop, and it would be all three guys, fighting all the time. It wasn't just like one guy in there and the two guys standing on the apron and waiting to get their time to come in to tag in or just replace like you do in Mexican wrestling. I mean, it was like, six-way brawl, fast-paced, six-way high spots. It was, quite the deal. It was very revolutionary. Anyway, never a slow week, and this one certainly was no different. I guess we can start talking about the tables, ladders, and chairs match where, to the best of my knowledge, nobody was injured, and it was actually a hell of a match.
Yeah, when we heard about that match, it was, everything you could possibly think that could possibly be wrong with the match. I mean, that was it. Ric Flair, old,
never been in
hurt.
Never been in a tables, ladders, and chairs match, or a ladder match. Never climbed a ladder, probably.
That's right, and I'm sure made some very derogatory comments about that style of wrestling in his day.
Many times.
Edge, who in his own book said he'd never do one of these for free on TV ever again. And
he said no. He said he would never do another one again. Period.
Oh,
and said that that they should only be done once a year and never on free television.
Okay.
But he said he himself would never do another one.
And he's injured, got a torn pec. So really, they had absolutely everything working against them, and they ended up going out there, and the match was great.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I guess. You know what? We should stop. We should stop being amazed when Ric Flair has great matches.
That's true.
It's not like it's a weekly thing, but it does happen often enough these days.
Yeah.
Every couple of months, like that match with Carlito. Remember a couple of months ago? It's just it was the day after he won the Intercontinental title, because the Intercontinental title match was nothing special. And then the next day, I'm watching this, going like, "Golly, he did it again."
But even this one, I mean, there was so much working against him. This wasn't just your normal Ric Flair going out and having a good match with somebody and sort of being surprised about it. This was like, I don't know, Flair with a ladder. Is he going to go off the ladder? Can Edge go off the ladder? Can anybody do anything without getting killed? Flair taking a splash with Edge coming off a ladder in the ring.
The ring over the top rope to the announcer's table.
Yeah.
Yeah. When they were up there, when he was up there, and I saw he was going to go, I was like, okay, they're going to kill each other.
And that's the end.
And they got up, and then Edge took that other bump at the end where he was over the top ropes through the table.
That one was really scary because I didn't know there was a table there.
Yeah.
You just saw him tip over and go over the top rope, and I thought, that's the end of him.
And then Flair's climbing up there, and for a second there, That place would have exploded had he won.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that hot-shotting the belt is such a wise idea, but at the same time, it does tell you that if they wanted to do it once, I mean, it would work.
He's one of those guys where he's just Ric Flair. So you can bury him, you can silence him, you can beat him.
They silenced him.
And he's just still Ric Flair. And if he would have won the belt, they would have went absolutely nuts.
Oh, it would have been the biggest pop, it would have probably been the biggest pop in a U.S. Ring of the Year.
Yeah.
I would think. Now, tomorrow in Charlotte, looks like it's going to be John Cena and Ric Flair against Edge and a mystery partner. So, I wonder if Ric Flair will at least get a promo.
Probably not.
Yeah. And also Monday night, the return of Hoist Gracie, who will face Matt Hughes in May. And that was the big surprise we were talking about a week ago, the surprise that will change UFC forever. And I don't know if it's going to change it forever, but it should probably be a pretty intriguing buy rate. And
I actually got to ask you, because I've asked a lot of people this. I thought I'd get your opinion. There's 3 big matches coming up.
Yes.
There's the Liddell Couture fight. There's Tito and Ken Shamrock after Ultimate Fighter. And then there's this one with Matt Hughes and Hoist Gracie. Which do you think is going to do the best business, and which do you think will do the worst?
I think that it really depends on the Ultimate Fighter TV show. If they don't do a great job in the Ultimate Fighter TV show, then Shamrock and Tito will do the worst. But I expect that they will do a great job on that show, and it will do the best. My feeling is the Liddell Couture will do better than Gracie Hughes. So that's kind of that's what I think. Gracie Hughes will be interesting, though. I think Gracie Hughes is going to get a lot in the last week, a lot of kind of curiosity stuff.
Yeah.
And I do think that Gracie Hughes will have the most. I think I wrote this already. I think it will have the most gambling on it because I know people who are just like absolutely convinced that Hoist Gracie is going to win. And believe me, I'm not one of them. But they are absolutely, I don't know if they remember their childhood fondly or what. I don't know what brings them to this idea. Well,
he's claimed he's discovered a secret.
Well, yeah, and Matt Hughes has been submitted. And as far as the top guys go that Hoist Gracie could go against, if you look at Vanderlei Silva or, Takanori Gomi or Matt Hughes or BJ Penn or George St. Pierre, I think I don't want to say that I think that if there was one that he might have a chance to beat, the most likely of all is Matt Hughes, just because I've seen Matt Hughes get submitted before.
Yeah.
And by I've seen him make mistakes. We saw it with Carlos Newton in a match that he won. We saw it with we saw him come close with a couple of other guys. Dennis Holman twice got him. And someone like St. Pierre who's been submitted, I just see St. Pierre just absolutely rolling over Hoist Gracie like it was nothing. I see BJ Penn beating him in a boring fight, but never being in trouble. I shouldn't say never being in trouble. Somebody like what name's Gomi's just going to beat him up. There's not even a question in my mind. Rich Franklin, same thing. Rich Franklin's just going to beat him up. Matt Hughes probably will beat him up too, but he's got a chance. And if he may, I would probably say he may pull it off. But when I saw him against Tokoro on the New Year's Eve fight, boy, it's a stretch. It's a stretch to think that he might pull it off. But
yeah, I do think he's got a chance, but I think it's a monumentally slim chance. But there's a chance.
Yeah, but it's like Hughes is not the guy. Like Hughes will smother him and may beat him up a little bit. But some of these other guys, like Silva, they would really beat him up bad.
Yeah.
They just pound him. And I don't think that this is the one guy who may not just pound him. So maybe if he's going to come back against a top guy, this is the one he's got the best chance with, and it's the one you take because I guess whatever feeling is, and he's not going to take. Obviously, he doesn't need it. So for him to take it, it tells me that he thinks he's found something.
Or it suggests that maybe he thinks he's just about done and he wants one last big payday.
Yeah, but he can get that one in Japan. Maybe he can after the after the Tokoro fight, maybe he can't get another one in Japan.
Yeah.
But having said that, the thing is with the Tokoro fight is that he was negotiating for this fight. I mean, he didn't finalize or nothing before the Tokoro fight, so he wanted this one before having that bad last performance.
Well, if you look at Hickson, I mean, Hickson was offered a lot of fights that he didn't take, and I'm sure part of that was he just wanted to sort of keep this aura about him by not having that one big loss that would expose him. So I guess there is a possibility that, Hoyce really thinks that he has a secret, and that's why he's taking it.
Okay. Well, we'll see. We are going to try to get Dory Funk Jr. on the air. Is Dory there?
Yep, I'm right here.
Dory! How you doing today?
Hey, good. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you on again. The last time we had you on, which was Hall of Fame season. It was only a couple of minutes, and you were actually at a show. You were wrestling, I think.
Oh, that's right.
I think you were wrestling with Carlos, right? Carlos Colon?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. So.
I believe so. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So we have a little bit more time tonight. I guess the first thing, because you and I talked about this a couple days ago, we want to talk about Ricky Romero, who, I didn't even know this until talking to you, and I didn't know until talking to your brother, that he trained both you and your brother and in fact, Ted DiBiase.
Yes, he did. He was the person that my father is my teacher, but Ricky Romero was actually the person that took me to the ring and actually trained me. And there's something about Ricky Romero that I would like everybody to know. He was basically wrestled the Amarillo territory, and he never really left for any long period of time. And I would just like everybody to know what a tremendous performer Ricky Romero was, because a lot of the fans out there most likely didn't get a chance to see his work. And he was terrific. He was a main eventer, and he could program back, and he drew lots of money in the Amarillo territory for us. A lot of people wondered why he didn't ever go anywhere else, but we were always happy to have him there.
Which was tougher for you? I guess I know, but the schedule seemed like absolutely brutal either way, working the Amarillo territory or going all over the world as world champion.
They were about equal.
Really?
Sure. And both of them I really enjoyed. I really had a good time. To some extent, professional wrestling, it just is tough on family life. But as far as the in-ring performance, there's nothing I ever had more fun at than working the Amarillo territory and or representing the NWA as world champion. It was on a more grand scale as world champion. It was jump in a plane and travel all over the world, but there were so many great workers out there that I had a chance to, the opportunity to wrestle. And it was just a thrill. The work in the ring, and, I've heard it represented every way, but for me, that was the biggest thrill, was the time spent in the ring performing for the fans and working with the wrestlers.
Now with you have a lot of different projects going on. Of course, I actually wanted to bring one thing up. The kind of an interesting little thing about the current wrestling scene.
Sure.
Was I know that you had a hand in training Edge Christian and Kurt Angle.
Right.
Now, were they all together actually in one camp, or were they at different camps?
Kurt Angle, Edge, and Christian. Edge was in our first camp, and Val Venus was with him. And at that time, WWE wanted to bring somebody in right away. So Edge and Val Venus were in the first training camp, and they asked us to recommend who could help them quick. So according to as the best I can remember, we recommended that Edge and Val Venus be brought up right away. Kurt Angle and Christian were with us for like between 5 and 10 training camps, and they spent a lot of time with us. Christian was a super athlete. Kurt Angle was he's an Olympic gold medalist. He's an amazing athlete. And one of the things that I tried to bring out Kurt Angle from the very beginning was that anything he could do in amateur wrestling, he could also work into his pro wrestling but just do it a little differently. And I just am really proud of all of those guys. Kurt just became world champion. Edge just became world champion, and Christian is getting ready to try for the world championship. So
I know, that's why I was going to bring that
amazing.
up.
It's amazing how those guys have come along.
Yeah.
When you were running the camps, I know there's been some problems nowadays with guys being called up before they're ready. Did you ever have that issue where WWE just wanted somebody and you felt it wasn't time for them to go up?
Not really. Most of the kids that we worked with at WWE, it was WWF then, I probably would have been recommending them quicker and faster. And we were kind of in that situation in the Amarillo territory that we would have talent. We were in competition with 30 other territories, and we were pushing our talent to go in the ring pretty rapidly.
Of all the guys that started out in Amarillo, from Hanson and I guess Jumbo Ceruta technically started out in Amarillo.
Yes, he did. He had his first debut match was in Amarillo.
Yeah, I think Backlund came pretty early. I don't know if he was right away. I mean, who were some of the guys where, you I guess from day one, or the guys who were really naturally from the start? You go like
from day one, he's going to be good.
Yeah.
That would be Kurt Angle, Christian, Jumbo Tsuruta, Teddy DiBiase took he was training for a little while and then really had a stage where he rapidly advanced, but it was more or less after he was in the wrestling business. But I would say most certainly Kurt and Christian and Edge. Lita, we thought would go fast, and she was here at the Funky Conservatory, and we did videos and photos on her, and she actually, well, as you know, she had some experience before she got here, but she went directly from the training camp here in Ocala, Florida, to WWE.
Yeah, she'd been in ECW for a while before.
As opposed to Mickie James, who was here with us in Ocala, and she had to fight like crazy to get in the business.
Yeah,
and it did take quite some time.
Now, what different projects are you involved with right now? I know you're coming out with a training DVD, among other things.
Right, and I guess the major thing right now is we have just received word that John Laurinaitis is going to be here to take a look at our wrestling talent the end of January. We're looking forward to that. We've got some kids that we think a whole lot of that will get the chance to perform in front of him. The wrestling DVD is something that it's more or less something that I've always wanted to do, and it took some time putting it together. It's a 2-hour DVD, and it's a detailed look at professional wrestling. It's a teaching DVD, and we've had some very nice responses from people that have already purchased it, and we're very pleased with that. And our other projects are really continuing to get kids ready for John Laurinaitis to take a look at them, and also we're going to be sending videos down to TNA. We've actually got a show coming up on January 29th where we're going to be taping for WWE and TNA tryouts. And when I say tryouts, that's videotape. Mm-hmm. And then John will be here at the end of January.
Do we go to Doryfunk, www.doryfunk.com? Is that where you would go?
Yes. Our website is www.dory-funk.com. We've got all the information on there, and we've had a real surge in traffic since we've moved our television to web broadcast. We've got 5 or 6 hours of video up on our website, so you can see all of our talent there. And we've had a huge response to the television on the web, and also to some of the late things that are happening. Wrestling is worldwide. We've got 2 kids coming in from Italy, one from France, and one from the United Kingdom within the next few days. And we're very pleased with the way things have worked out on the website. And it's www.dory-funk.com.
Okay. I wanted to ask you something. This was actually on a totally different subject, and this is
Sure.
when you were booking in the Carolinas, because I was actually writing a little bit about this and about Jay Youngblood. What do you remember about building up the Steamboat and Youngblood, Sergeant Slaughter, Don Kernoodle thing? Because that was one of the biggest things that they ever had, ever really in the Carolinas.
Most of it was we just took a plan, and we took about a 8-month advance look at Greensboro, North Carolina, and said, this is where we want to be, and we're going to do everything that we can to get there. Sergeant Slaughter has a brilliant mind for wrestling. So did Steamboat, and Youngblood was a very young, attractive wrestler, and Kernoodle was a very good athlete to be working alongside with Slaughter. We laid out plans for 8 months in advance and finally blew it off in Greensboro, and it was hugely successful. I think a lot of it is due to the working ability of Steamboat, Youngblood, Sarge, and Kernoodle. They did a terrific job on it.
Now, did you? Steamboat and Youngblood had teamed up before you ever got there.
Sure.
Did you? What did you come up, or did someone else ask you, or you even remember as far as like the idea of bringing Youngblood back and putting them as a team, or the idea of Slaughter with Kernoodle? Because Kernoodle was not a major star going into that feud.
No, but he was an excellent worker.
Yeah.
They both of those teams were established by the time that I got there.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to your childhood. What do you remember? If I know you remember a little bit about it because it was one of the biggest things ever in Amarillo at the time. What do you remember about Gorgeous George?
Gorgeous George came into town, and there's several things. He sold out the Sandy football stadium with my father, and it was my father against Gorgeous George. Just depends on what anybody would like to know about the match. It was a great match. Gorgeous George used to command a tremendous percentage of the gate.
Yeah. And
was a huge box office star. And in those days, everybody else on the card got a set salary, and George got a percentage.
Mm-hmm.
And just of interest, Dory Denton, the promoter, paid my father the same as everybody else on the wrestling card.
Mm-hmm.
And in those days, you used to fight about your pay. And he went back in, and they had 10,000 people in the Sandy Stadium. And so my father went back in and complained about the payoff. So instead of paying him extra as the promoter, he went around and took back money from all the wrestlers and gave it to my father.
Oh, that must have made him...
Well, put him on the hot spot with all the wrestlers.
Oh, that must have made him so popular in the dressing room.
Oh, my God.
Can you imagine?
But George was a huge box office card. And he was the first. Bleached blonde hair, flamboyant robes. He was much... he himself was much like the great Ric Flair.
Mm-hmm.
And the other side about Gorgeous George Wagner was also a bit of an amateur wrestler, too,
mm-hmm.
and could take care of himself in the ring.
Let's go to John in New Jersey. John, what's going on?
Hey, guys. Just first of all, I'd just like to mention to Dory that I think that the WrestleMania 2 match with you and Terry versus Santana and JYD is probably the most forgotten, really great match out there. And when everyone makes these lists of great matches, I always remember seeing that one when I was 16 and thinking, man, that was great. But my question is, how exactly did you feel when you were in the WWF at that time when they said, okay, you're going to be Haas? That bother you at all, or you're just like, whatever?
No, that did. I actually, when I was playing high school football, my coach used to call me Haas.
Never knew that.
I felt pretty good about it. And I'm fairly sure the reasoning was for marketing purposes that WWE or WWF, as it was then, always wants to own everything. And I'm sure that had something to do with their decision. For me, it was nothing other than them coming in and say, we're going to call you Haas. And I said, fine, that's okay with me.
I know.
But a lot of the wrestling fans have made a much bigger thing out of it than it really was. I was working for Vince at the time and enjoyed it very much and had a great time. And Haas Funk, same as my coach used to call me.
What? Hey, another name, which actually this morning just won the GHC title that you had a hand in the beginning of, and you watched, his career blossom, is Jun Akiyama. What do you remember about him, because you were in Japan, constantly when he was breaking in?
Who is that?
Jun Akiyama.
Oh, well, I was there when he broke in.
Yeah.
And there was a period of time in Japan, it's probably where I really began officially as a trainer, and it began just because some of the young kids came and said, please teach me. So I would show up an hour early or a couple hours early sometimes at the shows and go in the ring and train with the young Japanese wrestlers. One of them was Jun Akiyama, and he had tremendous potential then and has become one of the very top boys. He epitomizes fire in a professional wrestler.
Mm. Anything else, John?
No, that's it. Have a good night, everyone.
Okay, very welcome. Okay,
Dory, how many matches are you working per year?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, probably, 6.
6 or so?
No, probably more than that because I do work on our shows here sometimes in Ocala, and to be honest, every day that we have training, I'm in the ring doing some things with the kids, and that really works out well. I think there's nothing better than professional wrestling as an aerobic exercise, and it was kind of that way during my career. I had a lot of long matches and really enjoyed it. And in our training, we above all we try to keep our kids from getting hurt and injuries. So wrestling is really it's a super exercise.
No, so basically, you're feeling good enough that you can probably keep doing this for a few more years.
Yeah, I feel good. Yeah, sure.
How was the last match? As far as the last time you were in Japan a couple months back.
Had a ball there. That was with Butcher and Kamala.
Yeah, with I think.
And Nakajima.
Nakajima, right? Yeah.
Nakajima was only 17 years old. My gosh.
He's going to be. He's going to be incredible.
And,
he already is. He already is. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, at 17 and the maturity of his work and everything was quite amazing. Of course, being his kohai as to senpai, I got to be the boss of the team. But yeah, what a kid he is. He's great.
Let's go to Chad in Florida. Chad, what's going on?
Hey guys, how y'all doing?
Doing really good.
Good. Just want to let Dory know it's an honor to get to talk to you. And
thank you.
Real quick, I want to ask you guys, all three of y'all, 2 quick questions. My first question, general question for everybody. Any predictions as far as who you guys think is going to win this year's Royal Rumble?
Hunter.
Hunter's the safe pick, so I guess that's the one I'll go with. I mean, there's really, when you think about it, there's only a couple of big candidates, Hunter and Randy Orton, obviously, maybe. And Brian, who else really? Maybe Rey Mysterio? And probably not.
I really want to see Ray and Angle if they can do it at WrestleMania, so I have no problem with that. But,
yeah.
I
mean, I don't know.
Triple H?
What?
Triple H.
Triple H, yeah.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah,
that's who I was pretty much going with, is Triple H, but stranger things have happened, so.
Well, they made.
I mean, if everybody's picking Triple H, it may be a surprise. His show in the Rumble.
What?
Big Show. Is Big Show in it?
Big Show's in the Rumble. I think. I'm not sure if they've announced that officially yet, but I presume he'll be in.
I would go with Triple H.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, man, if everybody goes that direction, then there may be a surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other question I have is for Dory, real quick. Were you ever affiliated with the old Texas promotion, World Class Championship Wrestling?
As specifically World Class Championship Wrestling, no. However, have worked with Fritz and I think I'm not sure what his company was called. It was
right.
Southwest Sports. I think they called it Southwest Sports in those days, right?
Southwest Sports, but it was the Houston, San Antonio, Dallas territory.
Right.
Yeah.
And have worked for them quite often, and worked with David and Kerry, and also against Fritz himself in Texas Stadium.
Yeah.
But as it changed to World Class with the new name, no, I did not work with him.
Yeah, well, the reason I ask is because I remember watching it growing up as a kid. I watched it mainly for the Von Erich Freebird feuds that they had on there, and it was very entertaining to me. That's probably one of the first, that's probably how I first got into wrestling, was watching that. Do either you or any of the other guys, do you guys know what happened to it as far as did they just fold, or did they sell out, or what happened to that franchise?
They kind of ran out of steam after the Freebirds, and a lot of the problems with the Von Erichs, with several of the boys dying, and then all of the territories had a rough go. I mean, the business changed. I was just actually writing about that this morning. Dory and Terry owned the Amarillo territory, and they could see it coming, and it was just one of those things where the big were going to eat the small, and they lasted for a while because of the Von Erich kids, but ultimately, you were either going to be big or you weren't going to be around. So that's kind of what happened there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for your time, Dory. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
From your standpoint, your life was growing up was the Amarillo territory for years and years, and it was your father's before you. Emotionally, was it hard to sell that territory, or when you did it, was it just like in your mind, no, it's just time, and you just got to let it go?
Terry and I, when my father passed away, we said, we got together and we said, we want to show that we can take care of this territory for a year. So that was in 1973, and so a year took us to 74, and we stayed with it, and till 78, I believe, when we finally sold it out to Murdoch and Mulligan.
Peter in New York wanted to talk to Dory. Peter, what's going on? Oh, you're gone.
Hello. Good start right there.
Oh, well.
Hey, it's James in Tallahassee.
Hey, what's going on?
Honor to be on with you, Dory. Just a tremendous honor.
Okay.
Hey, thank you. I've wrestled in Tallahassee a lot.
Well, actually, when I was an undergrad at UF, we would always see the commercials for Bang Wrestling. So we tried to get down to Ocala one time, but it never worked out to see it.
Oh.
Well, we're on the web now, so if you have a chance, go to our website, and we have all our video on the web. It's 24/7.
Wow. Well, I just have to say, the one match I remember seeing when I was a kid, I watched Slamboree 93. You wrestled Nick Bockwinkel.
I remember that match well.
And that was a great match.
Yeah.
Sure, I remember that like yesterday.
I was actually calling to talk to Vince Russo. I wasn't prepared to ask anything of Dory, I'm like, wow.
Okay.
Okay, well, we're going to have to get... Dory, I want to thank you very much for being with us tonight, and best of luck. And anyway, www.dory/funk.com. You can look at his website. You can see the wrestlers that he's training, and he posts things all the time about wrestling history. And Dory, it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Enjoyed it, and look forward to talking to you next time.
Vince, how are you doing today?
All right, Dave. Now listen, do I need to put my armor on?
Perhaps.
Okay. All right. It's on, man. How you doing?
It's doing pretty good.
Good.
What have you been up to aside from We know that you did a wrestling show a couple of weeks back in Georgia, I think Rome, Georgia. Are you doing more with I think it's Ring of Glory Promotions? And,
that's pretty much what what I'm concentrated on doing right now. Just putting on the Christian wrestling shows. I go to a lot of churches and I speak to the church bodies and a lot of youth groups and kids and I've had a couple book signings here and there to promote the book, but that's kind of what's been keeping me busy the last couple of weeks or so.
What's the basic message that you like to send when you speak?
Man, I'll be honest with you, Dave. The basic message is, I spent a great deal of my life chasing a dream, and that dream, had a lot to do with, what I grew up on and the visions, put in front of us, on television and through the media and in society of, what's important in life. And, money is stressed greatly and status and celebrityism and, the things that basically society weighs that labels you successful. And, I chased those things for a long time throughout my entire life, only to find out at the end of the day that stuff doesn't mean anything at all. And that's why I really enjoy talking to kids at this point in my life because, if I knew some of the things, at their age that I knew now, my life just would have been very different and it would have been much, much easier. So I just kind of like to share my experience with them of, what I basically went through. And, of course, a lot of that has to do with the wrestling business.
What kind of guides are you using for Ring of Glory?
What now?
What kind of guides are you using on the Ring of Glory?
Well, it's funny, man. It's when we first started Ring of Glory, we had two shows. When we first did our first show, I understood, that the reality of the situation was that you just weren't going to find 16, not even 16. I mean, you weren't going to find 20, 25 Christians in the wrestling world. I mean, you just weren't. That's the reality of the situation. So basically, what I tried to do with the first show was, first and foremost, I just called some Christian athletes that I knew, and my second agenda, more or less, was to really, have guys on the show that I knew had good hearts and that I knew just might have been, in the wrong place, at that time of their lives, but, deep down inside, they were really good human beings and good individuals. And, just hoping that being around that environment, hopefully something would happen. And then the funny thing is, after we had that first show, and a lot of the guys that were on the show really had a good experience, by the end of the show. Well, a lot of those same guys, by the time we did the second show, a lot of those same guys called me, and it got to be, Vince, so-and-so is in trouble. Could you get him on the show? I think it would be helpful if he's there. Could you get him on the show? So it's almost that, originally we started as an outreach, really for the fans. I mean, that's what it was. But now it's kind of turned into 50-50, where it's an outreach for the people, of course, that attend, but it's also an outreach for our own. And I mean, I'm talking about, the wrestlers, because as well as I do, there's just a lot of guys out there struggling with a lot of things right now.
With when you look back at, say, that period, let's say from 1997 to 1999 when you were writing for WWE, and I mean, I know you look back and you go like the person you are today could not write at least some of that stuff, and probably some of it you could, but during that period, I mean, was there ever this mentality? Because the one thing, when it was successful and and if it wasn't, and even if it wasn't successful, where you had, that the kids audience, and you were definitely not writing to kids, but you knew they were there, and you were merchandising to kids, and then kind of denying it all at the same time. I mean, at that point, were you even thinking about that, or were you just like, we're in a wrestling war and we got to win the wrestling war?
Dave, you got to understand, and I mean, I don't know if you read the book or not.
I read it.
Okay, well, yeah, I talk about this in the book because there was really a period of time where there was some heat between me and Vince. And the reason there was the heat was because of exactly what you're talking about. I mean, we had a wrestling show on prime time from 9 to 11 o'clock at night. I wasn't writing a show for kids. I mean, and I say that now, and I was saying it back then. We were writing a show, you know, for adults that were watching TV from 9 to 11 o'clock. And then, you know, again, I wasn't in charge of marketing and merchandising, but, you know, here I am saying, okay, we're writing an adult show, and, you know, there's Vince selling Stone Cold Steve Austin lollipops.
Yeah.
And I had a real hard time with that. And, you know, I confronted Vince. And I knew, you know, Vince got upset with me because the bottom line was he wanted to make as much money as he possibly could. And that's not really a shot at Vince. I mean, you know, that's really business. But the reality of it was that, you know, I was so loud about it, and you know, I kind of made my feelings known that, you know, towards the end, Vince actually put me in the marketing and the merchandise meetings, and when they were coming up with new products, you know, licensees for the WWF, I was sitting right there, and I would say, you know, that's definitely aimed at kids, and if you think it's not, I mean, you know, that's ridiculous, and I was literally doing that, you know, towards the end of my run. But no, I mean, I'd be the first one to say that was absolutely wrong because we weren't writing a show for kids.
But I mean, at the same time, like during that period, I mean, you're not yet, you know what your audience, and I'm not, you know, your audience was across the board. It was adults and it was kids. It was everyone was watching that show when it was at its popularity peak.
Right.
You know, so I mean, I'm not blaming anyone because everyone else would have done the same thing for the same numbers with the mentality in the business at that time.
Well, you know, again, Dave, here's the thing, and I think you guys, you know, I mean, let's face it, you guys beat me up pretty good during the years, but I think there's something that you guys were really forgetting, okay? At that time, Vince Russo got paid to do a job. And my job was to deliver Vince McMahon and the World Wrestling Federation the highest ratings I possibly could. That was my job. That's what I got paid to do because,
we all knew that.
Okay, but here's the thing. I just want to make one thing clear. I mean, obviously, you know, Dave, in the wrestling business, ratings is money, you know, period. And that's what I got paid to do. But you've got to understand, that doesn't necessarily mean that I was a fan of everything we were doing. Because I wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of things on that show that we did that Vince Russo wasn't a fan of, but I wasn't writing a show that Vince Russo liked. I mean, I was trying to write a show that the masses liked. And you know, so I wrote a show for the masses, and again, yeah, I was the first one that said, you know, Vince, you can't be selling, you know, Austin lollipops and WWF slip and slides when you've got the head writer saying I'm not writing a show for kids. And yeah, I mean, you're right, Dave. Everybody was watching. But if you're asking me at that time if I had any morals or any values, the answer is no. Okay. I had none. Because again, you know, my job was to deliver him the highest rating we possibly could, and that's all I set out to do.
Okay. Now,
you had complete control of a company today, that meaning no committees or nothing like that. It was just whatever you said went.
Right.
Do you think without all of the controversy you could, I guess, create a winning formula that would perhaps beat WWE?
Is that Brian?
Yeah.
Brian.
Yeah, Brian, let me tell you why. And I mean, again, I'll be honest with you guys. And if you disagree with me, that's cool, because I think the majority of our disagreements over the years was basically just based on what type of a wrestling fan we were. I think that had
actually, I would disagree with that. But go ahead.
Well, okay, but you know,
because my disagreements as far as what you did, to me, I just wanted to see something successful, and it was successful. The only qualms of the WWE stuff, because more was successful than weren't, was the qualms that, you know, any parent would have watching wrestling with their kids and seeing some of the stuff and not all of it, because I was entertained by a lot of it during that period.
Well, you know, Dave, let me answer the question of Brian. And to get back to your question, here's the thing, Dave. I'm not going to sit there and tell you, no, we didn't write Shock TV. Of course,
well, everyone knows that.
Yeah, but let me tell you this. We had our moments of Shock TV. I mean, obviously, the Val Venus and the Mark Hendry. I mean, but I got to be honest with you. If you ask me, we hung our hat on the strength of the writing. And I mean, Ed Ferrara and myself, I mean, first and foremost, we were writers. And the one thing we really hung our hat on were, storylines that were layered. I mean, characters that were multi-dimensional.
We were talking about the period in WWF. Now, when you were there, I mean, one of the things in the book that really, I guess one of the real interesting parts of the book is when you really talk a lot, both good and bad, about your relationship with Vince McMahon over the years. And I mean, obviously, and this is from reading the book, and you even years ago told me the same thing. The one thing, and I guess this goes back but roughly 1999, so we're 6+ years ago, when he said, when you were talking about how much time you were spending, and I mean, everyone knows the writing job there. All of the main jobs in WWE are killer jobs because people work 24/7, and Vince does. That you were not spending enough time with your family, and he said something like, Vince, you make great money, you can hire a nanny, and that wasn't the answer that you were looking for when you were asking him at that moment. And I'm sure in his own, knowing, I'm sure Vince McMahon didn't think it was insensitive, yet reading it reads incredibly insensitive.
It was very insensitive. When it comes to that side, Vince and I are two very, very, very different people. I mean, when it comes to family and friends, we're just two different people. And Vince is so focused on business so much of the time that I really don't know how much family and friends is a priority in his life. I mean, I really don't know that. I know, to me, especially the older I got, the more that became a priority. So, basically when he said that to me, I mean, that was really the icing on the cake. I mean, at that point in time, I knew that all Vince McMahon really cared about, Vince Russo, was that I was his cash cow, and I was making his, company successful, and I was making him money. But as far as me, the human being who was really hurting with the family, I really don't think he cared too much about that. And, right then and there, he answered all the questions I had.
Now, historically, when you look back at Vince McMahon, the people who both worked the closest with him, or were his biggest money players, from Hulk Hogan to Austin. Not all of them, but Bret Hart. But most of them, in the end, they did not leave on what I would call the best of terms, and there was a lot of, certainly feeling on the other side that in the end, Vince didn't appreciate them. I mean, what was your thoughts? I mean, I'm not talking about yourself, but as far as when you saw different people that were on top, or to him, it was just the next thing.
Yeah, Dave, I'll tell you something real funny. And again, it's like, man, I don't want to say anything negative about Vince, but I'm just giving you my perception and my opinion. But I mean, Dave, since I've left the WWE, I've tried to contact Vince. I mean, through email. I mean, I haven't called the office or anything, but I've tried to contact him, just to reach out and be a friend. I don't want anything from him. I don't want a job. I don't want anything. But, let's face it, the guy was a big part of my life. The guy was a big influence on my life. And, there's a part of Vince Russo that misses Vince McMahon. And, there are times, when he was in the hospital and, around the holidays and stuff, I'll try to reach out to him. And it just goes back to what I said earlier. I don't know if Vince really knows friendship. I really don't know if he knows that, because the years that I was there, again, it was all about business. And I saw him go from one superstar to the next, to the next, to the next. I mean, he'd suck the blood right out of you. He'd use you, he'd steal a life from you, and when he was done with you, he'd kick you to the curb, and he'd go right next to the next guy. And that was really what was behind all the heat with Shawn Michaels and Stone Cold Steve Austin, because that's exactly what Vince was doing to Shawn. I mean, I witnessed it with my own eyes, and Shawn was absolutely right. I mean, Vince was done with Shawn and on to Austin. And I think Vince just sometimes forgets we're human beings, man. I mean, we've got families, we've got feelings, we've got responsibilities, and, we're just not, pieces of meat to just make as much money we can from and then be kicked out the door. And, I think that was his downfall, when it came to a lot of guys. He would just, suck the life out of you and then be done with you.
Have you spoken to him at all since that week or so that you went back? And
no, not at all. And like I said, I've tried to contact him a few times, and nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. And I just really find that unfortunate, because I'd be lying to you if I told you I didn't care about the guy and his family. I mean, I would be lying to you, because I do. But again, if you're not in the business, and if you're not benefiting him in some way, well, I mean, really, what use does he have for you?
Yeah.
What exactly didn't work out during that week? And looking at it from a few years later, do you think it's the same situation there?
There's no question. That was Brian again, right?
Yeah.
Brian, it's funny, because what happened was, I mean, I'll be honest with you. WCW closed down. It was a horrible experience for me. If everybody, and their brother wants to blame me for it, and I put WCW, that's fine. It was all my fault. I could care less, but it was very traumatic on me, and it was very, very difficult on me. So after that, I went to Atlanta. I opened my own business, and I stayed away from the product for a while. But I've got to be honest with you. I still had one eye on it, and I mean, week by week by week, I just saw those ratings almost going all the way back down to the time where I started. And man, I really took great pride in what we built together. I took a lot of pride in it. And when I saw it going all the way south again, I said, I'm going to call him. So basically, I called Vince, and, we had a couple secret meetings together. I went to his house and the whole 9 yards. And then basically what happened was I went to Connecticut, and, we made the financial agreements and everything else. And Vince just wanted me to show up at a pay-per-view that they were having that Sunday. Just show up, and he was going to announce me as I was going to be the head writer for Raw and SmackDown, and I was going to be reporting to Stephanie. And I just looked at him. I said, "You're out of your mind." I said, "There is no way I'm just showing up at a pay-per-view." I said, I'm not doing that. I said, "If you want me to hang around and you want to introduce me to the writing team tomorrow, great." I said, "But I'm not just showing up at the pay-per-view." So that's exactly what we did. Now keep in mind, I really had no idea what the writing team or committee consisted of at that point. But I mean, whether you guys believe me or not, I mean, I have no reason to lie to you. But, during the successful times at the WWE, I mean, it started basically with me and Vince, and then, we brought Ed aboard. So for the majority of the time, it was me and Ed, period. And that's what I was used to. So, he brought me over there to meet the writers, and I walk in a room, and there are literally 12 writers in this room. And I mean, I couldn't believe how it got from 2 people to this. And the one thing that really, really drew me back was their ages. I mean, they were just so young. I mean, so many of these guys, I mean, they looked like they were still in college. And I mean, it literally blew me away, because the whole structure, I mean, it was a different world. So basically what happened was Vince left, and he left me in there, and I literally, gave these guys about a year of programming. I mean, just boom, 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 boom. And as I'm telling them this stuff, I mean, I'm looking at their faces, and I could just see these guys were scared to death. And I also knew that when I left, they were just going to bury me to Vince. I mean, that's the wrestling business. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. I left. Vince came back in. I went on a plane to get home. They had Vince by himself, and everybody in that room just buried me. And, Vince called me back, and he said to me, he goes, Vince, I don't think this is going to work out. And I agreed with him. I said, no, Vince, it's not going to work out. I said, it's a different world. It's a different environment. It's a different setup. But the last thing I did say to him, I said, but, I just want to tell you, I said, as a friend, I said, you don't have what it takes in that room to turn your product around. I said, I sat there with them for hours. I listened to their ideas. And I said, I'm just telling you, in my opinion, you don't have what it takes in that room to turn the product around. And, that was almost 3 years ago already, and they're basically still where they're at from the time of that meeting.
Would you say that it was the youth of the guys in the room? Because in TNA there was obviously some sort of committee.
I think to me, I think the more people you have, the more. Well, would you agree? The more people you have in the room, the more time it takes to get what's done because you start.
Dave, you know exactly what happens. Let me tell you exactly what happens. When it was Ed Ferraro and myself, it was two guys sitting at my house together going over every segment of every show. Now it's exactly what you say, Dave. Now when you do it by committee, okay, now you have to sit there and now you have to hear everybody's opinion and you got to get everybody's 2 cents.
We're going to start taking phone calls. We're going to start with James in New York. James, what's going on?
How you doing, guys? Great show.
Thank you.
Happy to hear it. Yeah, I came across it by accident, actually.
Okay.
But very good show. I'm very happy with it. Vinny Rue, how you doing?
All right, how are you?
Okay. Quick question for you. Here you talk about Vince McMahon, but what about Eric Bischoff? Didn't hear you bring his name up.
Yeah, well, you want to know something
that's another book.
Well, yeah, it is. Actually, I just started the second one on Friday. But you want to know something real funny? I mean, I'll be totally honest with you. Eric and I were put in a position where we were forced to work together. I mean, neither one of us had any say in it. I mean, that was Brad Siegel's decision, and there we were working with each other. And, the reality of the situation is the wrestling business being what it is, from day one, neither one of us trusted the other. I mean, it was just that simple. Eric didn't trust me. I didn't trust Eric. And, I mean, you're just not going to be able to be successful that way. And,
that was at WCW, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about WCW. And you know what? I mean, personally, professionally, Eric never did anything to me. I mean, he never did. But there was just never that trust between us, ever.
I got you. Now, what about this new wrestling federation you're starting? Is there regular matches? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, no, basically it's it's a lot like it's the same format as you'll see on Monday nights, but the difference is that the stories are just biblically based and they're translated into 2006 in a language that people can really understand. It's really based on storyline and characters, but it's pretty much the same format as I was used to writing.
I mean, you're not going to see steel Bibles or anything like that, right?
No.
All right. Well, I like a TLC table ladders, a crucifix match.
Oh, God.
Something like that.
Okay.
Is the next book all WCW?
It's going to be WCW, TNA, and also, what I'm doing now. It's going to be brought up to now. So, yeah, there's a lot to cover in the next one.
Okay, now, what were your feelings? Because, I mean, the one thing, I guess your tenure in TNA kind of ended when they were courting Hulk Hogan and, and I guess Hogan's demand was for you to be gone, and then Hogan never signed anyway. And I mean, I remember watching that whole thing go down, and I never really believed Hulk Hogan was ever going to come.
You want to know something funny about that, Dave? I don't know if you've ever been to the fairgrounds in Nashville. Have you ever been there?
Yeah, I think I was about almost 20 years ago now.
Okay, well, you know what it looked like, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, the funny thing is, man, we would go to the fairgrounds every week, and I mean, for people that don't know, I mean, I don't know any other way to put it, but it's really redneck country, and I mean, it's done in almost like a barn atmosphere. I mean, there were literally cows outside the back door at the fairgrounds, literally. And it's so funny that you say that because when I heard about Hogan too, I just kept saying to myself, there is no way that this man is going to show up in a limousine and come wrestle in this building. I mean, and I knew it. I mean, it wasn't a Hogan thing. And I, in my heart of hearts, I knew it wasn't going to happen, but they believed it was, so I just, kind of bowed out and, let them go ahead with business.
But, I mean, the thing that I could never figure out, and, I mean, the whole time this thing's going on is they're doing all this and they're devoting their whole TV and all their publicity to Hogan, and he had not signed the contract, and it's Hulk Hogan. I mean, it's like, nothing against him. I think Hulk Hogan's a great businessman, but I can't commit to him because he's pulled out countless times, and knowing that you can't commit to him unless he's got that signed contract. And they moved heaven and earth to get Hulk Hogan in, and he, verbally would agree, but when he didn't commit, and then they built that whole TV around him, and they ended up with egg on their face when it was over.
Well, you know what, though, Dave? I think at that point they were trying desperately to do anything they possibly could do to get TNA on the map. And if that meant talking about Hulk Hogan and saying Hulk Hogan was going to be on the show, even if he wasn't going to show, I actually thought that they felt that was going to give them a little steam to even talk about it if it wasn't going to happen. I mean, I agree with you, though. I think that was a huge mistake without having any kind of a contract.
Okay, let's
go. Would you ever go back to TNA?
What now?
Would you ever go back to TNA?
You guys, I love Jeff Jarrett to death, and he's probably one of my best friends in the business. But I can't work with him. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. That's one of the reasons why I'm not there anymore. You guys, one thing about me, and you can love me or you can hate me, but one thing I take great pride in is I've always had a great respect for what wrestlers do in the ring. I've always had a great respect for it because I'm not a wrestler. And I never got involved in what they did in the ring. I never laid out a match. I would basically say to the guys, this is what we need to get in the finish. You lay out the match because this is what you do. And I really respected that. But on the other hand, one of the biggest pet peeves I have is that, wrestlers think they can be writers. And they think there's nothing to writing a wrestling show. Anybody can write a wrestling show. And I mean, I take great offense to that because I know when Ed and myself were writing those shows, I mean, we put our blood, sweat, and tears, and we agonized over those shows. And a lot of those shows were really, really crafted. And, I mean, there's a big difference between writing a wrestling show and booking a wrestling show. They're two different things. And, Jeff thinks he's a writer, and that's good. I mean, it's his company, all the power to him. But I can't work with that, to be honest with you.
Okay, let's go to James in Tallahassee. James, what's going on?
Thanks for having me back on. Vince, just want to say I got saved back in 2000, and what would you say right now with this audience about God that you just found out the past couple of years, that led to transformation in your life?
Well, a lot. I mean, where my downfall was, not only in the wrestling business, but in life, where my downfall was I know in my heart of hearts I was clearly given a gift. I know that. I mean, there are people out there that hate me and didn't like what I did, but I mean, I know I had a gift to write and to tell stories and to create characters. That's what I do. But my problem was I took all the glory for that. I mean, it was all about me. I took all the success. I took all the money instead of putting the glory where it really belonged. And that was really my downfall in life. And, I paid a heavy price for that. But, thankfully I found out what the truth was.
Praise God.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Second point, I wanted to just throw it out to all three of you guys. I was just watching a tape of SummerSlam 94 and the Brett versus Owen cage match. And I'll just never forget that cage match in which these guys didn't, cut themselves open at all. They just had the match in the cage. It was tremendous. They had some interviews before, just leading up to it. But they did it without all the vignettes or, the crazy stuff that we see today. Do you think we're getting away from the wrestling product too much? Just throwing that out there to you guys, and I'll gladly hang up and listen.
There's no such. To me, it's all of it all intertwines. I mean, you have to have a little bit of everything on a show. You can't. If you have a show, and I've seen it, of nothing but matches, that's not going to work. If you have a show of nothing but interviews and no wrestling content, that'll work for a little while, but eventually that's not going to work either.
Well, where's the line that you fix it at to
There
make
is
it
no
work?
line. It changes every week because some weeks 70% wrestling is a great show. Some weeks 70% non-wrestling is a great show. I mean, when people go to me, like sometimes they'll go, there was only 32 minutes of wrestling in that 2-hour show. It's like, I don't care if it was 32 minutes of wrestling, 18 minutes of wrestling, or 110 minutes of wrestling. If the show's entertaining, it's good. I don't think, so that's my thing, and you want to change it. I don't think you want every show to be the same. One of the problems I have with WWE right now is it is the same. It's like this match has to go 6 minutes. It has to end here, and it has to, and it's like, and then you get the main event, and the main event has to go a certain length of time. Well, sometimes some of these main eventers shouldn't go that long, and sometimes you want to just cross things up. I mean, I don't want to watch Chavo Guerrero and Trevor Murdoch and know that in 3 minutes and 30 seconds they're going right to the finish. I think you want to just, everything. You want to make the shows different, and sometimes I think you want some long interviews, and sometimes I think you don't want. Let's say the 20-minute interview with Triple H. It's like
you're right.
Every now and then it's good, but weekly, no way.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, Dave, because again, it's take TNA for instance, bro. I mean, if you're talking about the future of wrestling, I mean, I'm talking about the end product. You've got to be talking about the X division. I mean, those matches blow me away because you want to talk about reality TV. You're glued to the TV watching those young kids because this is the match where somebody's going to break their neck. I mean, that's what you're watching it for. But it's exactly what you said. That's only going to carry you so far. These guys, they have no storylines. They've got no characters. They've got no personalities. You never hear them talk. And, like you said, man, it really is that balance, and that balance really does, you really do need to mix it up week to week.
Yep. Anything else?
Bye, guys. God bless you, Vince. Good to talk.
Thank you, man. Take care.
Okay, we're going to go to Kurt. Kurt, what's going on?
Hey, how are you guys?
Good.
Just want to say, Vince Russo, just a huge fan of your work. I think I've been watching wrestling for almost 20 years, and I can't remember a time, really, when I was more entertained than when you were writing the WWE in 1998, 1999. And I actually enjoyed WCW a little bit, too. I know I didn't really follow the rules of great booking, but it's definitely a heck of a lot better than what WCW was putting out before you were there.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
And definitely, too, and as a fan, too, and someone who listens to Brian and Dave once in a while, I'm a little annoyed that people always love to constantly point out, they love to point out that, well, after Vince Russo left WWE, that's when they really had their best success. And
they did.
Dave, can I comment on that?
They did, though.
Dave,
let me comment on that. Okay, because let me tell you.
Everyone built it. No, hold it. Everyone built it. Rock and Steve Austin and Triple H, those were tremendous characters, and they had a great year in 2000. I mean, in Austin, I know Austin wasn't there, but Rock and Triple H and Benoit and all of those guys, the emergence of Kurt Angle, it was all there.
You've got to understand, and this is why, so many people, said, I left Vince high and dry, and I did this, and, blah, blah, blah. Bro, the bottom line is that last conversation I had with Vince McMahon, okay, I told Vince, I said, Vince, all your pieces are set in place. Everything is in place. You can ride this wave for the next year. I mean, those were my exact words to him, and that's the truth. Everything was in place. The characters were in place. The storylines were in place. It was all there.
They went in no. They went in a completely different direction in 2000. So that's
no.
Because you had the emergence of Angle, who wasn't even there basically when you were there.
One guy.
No. Benoit and the Radicals coming in. Oh, it was a whole new product when you brought
Benoit
in.
and the Radicals came in 1999.
They came in January 2000.
Well, yeah, the end of 99, 2000.
They did. If someone builds a sports team and they win, say an NFL analogy, and someone builds an NFL champion, but then they go on to win a couple more championships after, the person who built the team still deserves credit for building that team.
Well, the guy who built the team was Jim Ross. We only have about a minute. Vince,
yeah.
You're still there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to say one thing because I don't want to take responsibility for what that last caller said.
Oh, don't worry.
I just want to make sure that I go on the record to say it was, before we ended the conversation, it was truly a team effort. I mean, from behind the scenes to the wrestlers to Jim Ross to Jim Cornette, it was a 100% group effort, and I want to make that clear.
Okay. Jim, I want to get you back on in a couple of weeks because I got a lot more that I wanted to talk to you about that we totally ran out of time. Plus, we have a full bank of calls waiting to talk to you. So
I'd be happy to. I'd love to.
Okay, we'll probably try to do this in about another month or so.
No problem. Whenever you'd like.
Okay, we'll contact Vince again. Thanks very much. We'll be back live in 2 weeks, which is our annual Super Bowl show. So that's our 4th annual. Anyway, we'll see you then. You'll listen to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Broadcasting Network.